Mahomes at bay.
The Tampa Bay Bucs, Super Bowl 55.
Hello and welcome, Bucs Report viewers, as well as our regular Bucs Banter audience. We are finally all here together in one place for yet another installment of the Bucs Banter podcast. I am your host, as always, Collin and Bohdan, and I kind of feel like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson right now, just because at this moment we're everywhere, but all at once. You could be watching this live right now on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Twitch. But don't worry if you're not tuning in live, you'll still be able to catch up on the show later. The podcast will be available for streaming on Apple Podcasts and Spotify whenever it's convenient for you. Also, I should mention we always appreciate likes and subscriptions on our Bucs Banter YouTube channel. So if you're enjoying the content we're putting up there, please go ahead and do that. Now, I am happy to announce that this collaboration with Bucs Report will be a regular occurrence moving forward, and we will be hosting our show, Bucs Banter, every Monday night right here on the Bucs Report network. This will take place every Monday at 7 p.m., not only on Bucs Report, but all of our usual Bucs Banter outlets as well. So I'm pumped up to be here, connecting with the Bucs Report audience live for the first time, primarily because we are now reaching more NFL fans and, more importantly, more Bucs fans. Hopefully this will result in some great engagement with whoever is watching the show live. Please do not be shy and feel free to chime in at any point during the broadcast. I will try my damnedest to address any questions or desired topics that you suggest in the comments during the show. Now, if you are a regular listener, then you already know my guest for today's episode. As I've said before, he's getting dangerously close to co-host status. He has surged ahead of his other contender in the Bucs Banter Power Rankings, our other regular contributor, Scott Capron, who is currently golfing. Not this guy, though. Not him. He's committed. He's punctual. He always brings a unique and educated perspective to his football takes. I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, the intelligent, the effervescent, the attractive Bohdan Yard.
Wow. The intros keep on getting better and better. It's insane. We got a ton of people out in the chat there. I see my guy Johnny Santilli just hit us with a comment as well. Let's go, Bucs fans. I'm so pumped up to be here on Tuesday or Monday. Sorry.
And happy Memorial Day to all of our American brothers and sisters. We appreciate you guys and hope you have enjoyed celebrating today. We got Andrew Faubert in the comments, fellow Canadian, showing respect for that, no doubt. So today we're going to be talking about this is like the wide receiver show. Are you a believer in the wide receiver? We will be talking about the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. We'll be ranking them. Bo and I will each have our own rankings, and we'll be sure to talk about a bunch of other good squads and good receivers. So that's kind of the theme of today's episode. But as always, we're going to start with what's up with the Bucs. What's going on in Tampa? It's a slow point of the year, but there's still a little bit of news to catch up on. First of all, this past week, within the last week or so, we re-signed Antonio Brown. So he finally inked his deal. There was lots of people saying, why hasn't he signed yet? Well, the Bucs have signed him. They had to check him out after a minor knee procedure was done. I'm sure it was all taken care of and done, executed perfectly. So he signs a 1-year deal, $3 million guaranteed, but he can make as much as $6 million if he meets his targets and therefore meets his financial incentives. In terms of AB, I mean, I expect him to have a much better season in year 2 with the Bucs. It was obvious last season. He had plenty of things going on off the field, first of all. And he was dealing with getting adjusted to a new offense on the fly, not fully comfortable, dealt with some nagging injuries. I understand that he's not super young in the tooth, but he's also a different kind of cat and a different kind of athlete. And I think people forget just how dynamic AB is when he's right. And I think we're going to see a closer version of that this year. I don't know what you think, Bo.
Yeah, I definitely am expecting a lot more from AB this year. Not that he underperformed last year in any extent, but I think there's definitely room for a guy like him and what he's brought to the game beforehand. So I'm really excited to see what AB has.
Right, and we got Megan Wilton writing in saying AB still has something to prove for me. That's fair, but time will tell. And I think based on his career as a whole, I don't know how much more he could prove, but I think he is motivated to prove something in Tampa and be an even bigger contributor to their Super Bowl aspirations this season. I'm excited to watch it. I think the continuity of that receiving core, playing with Tom Brady for his second year, I'm really hyped up about it. I think it's going to go real well, but that's probably not a shock to anyone who knows me. Okay, so Harold Goodwin, our special teams coordinator, a guy very likely worthy of some head coaching interviews at the very least moving forward. He had a press conference this week, which I tuned into because, of course, the Buccaneers draft was heavily invested into the special teams department, and I wanted to hear what Goodwin had to say about some of our guys. And he spoke very highly of both KJ Britt, who was our 5th round selection, and Grant Stewart, who was the 7th last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, in relation to the impact they could potentially bring to the Bucs special teams units. He specifically mentioned Stewart's speed and athleticism as an asset and said KJ Britt loves to hit people in the mouth. So that's pretty much carbon copy from the scouting reports. I mean, that's what you'd like to hear, though. And in terms of Jalen Darden, the team's 4th round pick and hopefully our future return man and potentially much more in the future, Goodwin seemed excited talking about Jalen Darden. And the one thing he kept saying was, you barely hear a sound when he catches the ball, which is a great indication of like natural hands for playing that kick returner spot. So I'm into that. I'm all for that. Cool with me. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of catch up on that. And then what I said last episode for anyone who didn't tune in, I loved how Bruce Arians opened up the facility for Brady to run a private workout with a bunch of the Bucs guys at the Advent Health Training Facility. I think it shows a really cool compromise between the head coach, because obviously he wants all his guys there working out, but he understands Brady's angle, who's been the vocal advocate on behalf of the players, at least to the players, telling them stay away, don't be scared. So, Arians said, come on in, work out, we'll dip out and leave the space for you. I just want you to have the facilities. And then, TB12 and his guys get the feel of a private workout, but they get the facilities of a top-notch NFL organization. So I thought that was really cool.
Especially coming off of the news out of Denver with Juwan Johnson. Just to see that they're taking all the pressure off their veterans to keep working out, use the facility, get that little bit of extra protection from any type of injury that could happen. It's a smart move, and especially coming off of the Super Bowl, Bruce Arians isn't concerned about the effort that Tom Brady is going to be putting forward in this offseason or any of the veterans on his team. So just give them the space to do what they like to do, and I think it's a great move by them for sure.
Yeah, so I mean that's really all the Bucs news that hasn't or already has, but that we're going to hit on today. Because again, it's the slow season, it's the off season. So let's take a look around the league and see what is newsworthy. What could we talk about? First of all, Adam Vinatieri has retired officially at 48 years of age. 4-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, he probably should have pulled the plug 4 years ago, but who can blame the guy for taking another kick at the can?
Keep getting those checks.
Yeah, no doubt. But anyway, I mean, you got to tip your hat to him. Potentially the greatest kicker of all time. He holds a number of NFL records, including most consecutive field goals made, which isn't a reflection of just being in the game for a long time. He hit the most in a row, 44. It is most career field goals made, almost 600, and most career points with a career field goal percentage of 83.8%. I think that's enough kicker talk for today, though.
Brady says 48, hold my beer. Shout out to you, Johnny Dean. That's it.
Yeah. Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell. He's a guy we've talked about on the pod. He brings gold in the form of quotes, whether it's like true gold or just more of a matter of content that we can laugh at coming out of Dan Campbell's mouth is one thing, but he did make a real announcement related to football, not related to violence. And that was that Penei Sewell, 7th overall selection out of Oregon, the stud left tackle, will actually start at right tackle this season. So, I mean, we've covered the drafts a ton, Bo, and in doing so, it's funny. I just kind of assumed Sewell would slot in immediately at left tackle. Like I didn't even really think of it, even when Detroit took him.
Yeah, I don't even know who their left tackle is off the top of my head.
Right. And I hadn't either. I just assumed Sewell would whoever they took in the first round would automatically be their best version at that position.
Yeah.
But they have Taylor Decker, who's a former first round pick and who they've locked up.
Okay.
So I get it. Like I totally forgot about that. Right. And so I was surprised when I read the headline, but it's not that outlandish of a decision, I guess, when you really like break it down. Like, start him out at right tackle. He's expressed some discomfort with the switch, just, said it's been a challenge for him. And it's kind of funny, like last year, Tristan Wirfs coming out of Iowa, there was a lot of talk about whether he might get moved depending where he was drafted. Yeah. Of course, Jason Light and his staff made the savvy move to ensure Tristan Wirfs became a Buccaneer, which all Buccaneers fans around the world, at least I thank the heavens every day for Tristan Wirfs. So he was able to keep playing right tackle, his natural position. But there was talk of him moving to the left side at the NFL level, But anyway, during his pre-draft interviews last year, he compared the concept of switching from one side of the line to the other to that of wiping your ass with the wrong hand. So that's just kind of a funny quote that surfaced in the last week, with talk of the Penei Sewell situation. So I thought that was funny and worth mentioning.
He's not wrong. I was just thinking about that. It's like everything is backwards, and taking from a guy who has a crazy blister on his right hand right now, I would bet it would be extremely uncomfortable to do everything the other way around.
For sure. Absolutely. We got Christopher Cole. It's almost time for mandatory mini camps to get going. Can't wait. I love it, Christopher. I'm into it. I'm with you, buddy. I think all Bucs fans, all NFL fans are excited to get closer and closer to pads and action and all that good stuff. But it's our job to entertain you in the meantime, and that's what we're trying to do here. So Aaron Rodgers, still holding out strong. Holding out. Zero involvement in Packers workouts of any kind. He's going nowhere near that facility. He spent time in Hawaii. And
with your guy Miles Teller, right?
Miles Teller, definitely not my guy, but I had to like double check to suit the name to the face. But I obviously recognize him from movies. I saw Miles Teller got punched out in Hawaii on that same vacation. You hear about that?
I did not hear about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. You check it out. You're supposed to be our pop culture guy, Bo. What's up with that?
I know. I'm really sorry. I should be all over that. I kind of want to. I could leave the podcast right now, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So Rodgers is still holding out, and then like all the receivers didn't show up as well. And whether that's a sign of solidarity with the MVP quarterback or a coincidence, well, I guess that's for you to decide. But I mean, I'm just curious to see what happens once, trades can start taking place. Once we get into June, we're real close to that point. I mean, Green Bay needs to smell the tea leaves here and start considering where they're going to send him. Cause I think Rodgers is going to sit out, and I don't think he has any, like, he's committed at this point.
I don't think you're wrong. Obviously that's what he's trying to put out there as well too. But when I read that story, I just felt really bad for Jordan Love. I was listening to another podcast. I forget who it was off the top of my head, but you can't actually find a picture of Jordan Love in a Packers uniform. He was never even suited up on a Sunday. And going into OTAs, he's never thrown a pass to a starter. Like, this is insane at this point. He's just in red jerseys, playing like the scout team QB. So it's a tough scene out there for Jordan Love, but I'm with you. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is bluffing at all. I think this could easily go into week 1, week 2, if they're not prepared to make a trade. And the longer you hold out, and I think this is something we'll touch on a little bit later, the longer you hold out on these deals, the less and less the packages end up being. Obviously, it's Aaron Rodgers, the MVP of the league last year, so they're still going to command a ton of value in that trade, but not exactly in a position of strength of going to the table with that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact there's no picture of that's crazy. I didn't know that, but like there being no pictures of Jordan Love in a Packers uniform is kind of crazy. Aaron Rodgers is pretty savage, man. He was probably like, this kid isn't ready. Like, screw these guys. I'm out. Like, you're not going to draft me playmakers. We're not going to go for it on 4th down and our chance to head to the Super Bowl, telling them what's what. We got Johnny Dean, Aaron Rodgers will not play another down in Green Bay. All the fines they can give him are almost covered by his paycheck from Jeopardy alone. I actually heard, Johnny, that that he's not the top, he's not the guy that Jeopardy fans want most. What's that guy, Ken Jennings?
Yeah, Ken Jennings. He's leading the poll. I saw that poll too. I'm up on my Jeopardy pop culture.
Right, there we go. You're working your way back. You're still doing better than Scott Capron, bro. Let me tell you.
Well, the thing with from a money perspective, the Packers would actually get a ton of money back if he just decides I'm not coming to my job. So I don't think it's about money. The Packers would be in a much better position spending that money on Aaron Rodgers.
Of course, no doubt about it. But if he's not going to play for you, I mean, at some point you need to accept that and not let time take away all your leverage on the trade market, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
All right. Well, we've talked at length about Aaron Rodgers in previous podcasts, and I'm sure we will again. I know that there's another player who wants out, and this is a special interest to NFC South fans, a guy who's given us quite a bit of trouble over the years. He's given a lot of defensive backs and defensive coordinators trouble over the years, and that is Julio Jones. Julio wants out. Didn't necessarily admit it on his own accord. Kind of got duped into it, but live on television. But anyway, he does want out. That's obvious. And I know, Bo, you got thoughts on this, so I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, and we'll get to that part because that's off the top, right? But I think we just need to remind, not that the Bucs fans need any reminder of who Julio Jones is, but this is his 10th season, or this will be his 11th season in the NFL. He's got 5 All-Pros already, 7 Pro Bowls, leads the NFL all-time in yards per game at 95.5 yards per game. Guy's unbelievable. 20th on the all-time receiving list. Basically, for the last 3 or 4 years, if you were starting a team, Julio Jones would be your wide receiver 1 if you had any pick available of your wide receivers in the league, and it wouldn't be that much of a debate to have him as your wide receiver 1. But yeah, I think this all starts probably in the exit interviews, which we weren't privy to. Julio requested a trade from the Falcons months ago. Let's say it was March, maybe February. And it's just extremely quiet from the Falcons all the way up until the draft, basically. Kind of leaks out on the draft, kind of heats up a little bit more when that whole Shannon Sharp incident goes down. Do you want to describe that a little bit to them, or you want me to just pick that up too?
Yeah, no, the Shannon Sharp thing, because we did talk about it on the last pod. It was vicious, if you watch it play out. So Shannon Sharp obviously connected with Julio Jones on a personal level for many years, potentially in a mentorship type of role. Decides they're talking Julio, him and Skip Bayless, the most trash sports media personality in the history of the planet. But anyway, he calls up Julio, puts him on speakerphone. They're live on what is it? First Take? No, what's that show called? Whatever it's called. And he asks him where he's going, and Julio just says, yeah, I'm not staying in Atlanta. I want out, or I'll be gone, kind of thing, live on the air. But there was no prefacing the conversation with, yo, Julio, just so you know, we are live right now, kind of thing. So the host of the show was trying to say that from the back, but that's ruthless.
Well, it's so ruthless. And at the end, Shannon Sharp says, okay, I got to go. We're on the air.
Yeah.
So there's no way Julio knew. Also, we think that Shannon Sharp is a pretty good friend, mentor to Julio. But when they're talking about it, this whole thing comes up because Skip Bayless, trying to prod for ratings as much as he can, basically says, okay, Julio's going to the Cowboys. Tell me I'm wrong. And Shannon Sharp is basically saying, no, Julio's not going to the Cowboys. Julio's staying in Atlanta. So Shannon Sharp hasn't even talked to Julio about it, really, because Julio comes on and immediately is just there's no way, I'm leaving, I'm out. And it's nothing about the Cowboys. He kind of denies that it's going to be the Cowboys. But the more I thought about that instance, just so it's so weird on so many levels, and just seems like they kind of put Julio in a horrible spot. kind of put the Atlanta Falcons in a really horrible spot too. Just basically takes away any type of leverage they had going into June 1st. And I can pick it up there because June 1st is a big day. So June 1st is basically the day in the NFL calendar that if you cut someone, if you trade someone, you're able to stretch whatever cap hit they were on the books for over the remaining years, the remaining guaranteed years in their contract. So for the Falcons, if they're able to keep them, the cap hit is $23 million. Doesn't really seem likely at this point. But if they trade him, the cap hit for the team that gets him is $15.3 million this year, 11.5 the next 2 years, but only $2 million of those 11.5 years is guaranteed. So those back end years really gives the team that whatever team gets Julio will be able to restructure his contract and just make it work that much easier because he's not owed a ton of guaranteed money from here on out.
Yeah, that's I'm glad that you broke that down for us because like on the surface that contract looks intimidating, right? Because obviously Julio's got some injury concerns and he for whatever reason has trouble finding the end zone despite being a prolific talent who's super productive. And we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure, when we get into our top wide receiver groups in the league. But it is fun and to discuss where he might go. And I think, salary cap flexibility needs to be considered in that process, of course. And I would love to let's talk about some of the teams where we think he could end up going or maybe where we want to see him go. Like what are some scenarios here, Bo? You got any top of mind you'd like to start with?
Yeah. I would just want to maybe even just dig in on the Falcons because they're kind of due for a rebuild. Obviously, this is a good time to do a rebuild in the NFC South if you're going to start one this year. Clear favorites in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kind of up for grabs underneath that with Drew Brees leaving. But it's really tough to rebuild when you have a star wide receiver like they have and quarterback super overpaid on their end as well too. So committed to Matt Ryan at least for the next 2 years. They restructured his contract again for the last three times for the third year in a row, restructuring his contract because they weren't even in cap compliance with the NFL right now. So they're in absolute cap hell right now. They have no maneuvers other than to trade Julio Jones.
See, and all these Bucs fans, including myself, we've just taken so much pleasure in taking looks at the New Orleans Saints cap situation and reading up on that and how they just keep prolonging these years where it's going to catch up with them in the end. But under the radar, the Atlanta Falcons have been digging themselves a little bit of a hole too, it seems.
Totally have. And they at least have their picks. They have the draft capital still, but they don't have a ton of moves out there. So as for Julio, and I was trying to think of this, I'm like, okay, what does Julio want? Obviously, he wants to win. He wants to get a ring. What is he looking for in an offense? Obviously, his best years to me were under Kyle Shanahan, that 2016 year when they were going to the Super Bowl. That offense was highly prolific. Probably gave some Bucs fans nightmares. But creative OC is a bonus for Julio at this point of his career, maybe lengthening his prime. He's still that dominant wide receiver. I know he missed 7 games last year and he's got some injury concerns, but if you really look at his stats, he hasn't missed that many games in his career. So I think that he could be great still.
Sorry to cut you off. I just want to say,
go ahead.
The scenario you're kind of insinuating, like him coming back potentially rejuvenated and just lighting the league on fire. At least that's how I read it. It reminds me tons of Randy Moss. Like people forget Randy Moss being in Oakland was just written off. Like everyone thought his career was done. They thought he was pooched.
And he finds it in New England, right?
Yeah. So I just wanted that comparison was top of mind when you were talking like that.
It's a great comparison, honestly. So what are the teams that want Julio? What do they look like? To me, you're looking at $15 million in cap space, like we talked about, hopefully, or the ability to create it through some sort of restructuring or cutting guys. There's always a way to get it done. Just ask Jason Light, right? But you also need the depth to survive the draft capital hit, right? So there's that kind of is the thing that writes off a lot of teams that maybe don't have first rounders this year, and then their second rounder is that much more important to building their team long term. So I know every former player that you see on the media right now is basically saying, okay, if Julio Jones is available for a second rounder, you need to just go and do that. But how many blue chips do you have on your Super Bowl roster right now that were drafted in the second round? And having that control over a player, over a contract, and the cost protection that comes along with that is just invaluable in the NFL. So I think the two things you need is the cap space or the ability to make it, and some extra draft capital to be able to take in Julio Jones on your roster. I've got 4 teams that I think kind of fit that mold, or are willing to just risk it all for Julio at this point.
Ben Kieran's already asking, like, is this one of those teams?
Oh, one of those teams. That might be one of those teams. They're not at the top of my list, but they are. The Seattle Seahawks are definitely in play here.
Okay.
I'm going to start at number 4 for me. Number 4 for me was the San Francisco 49ers. They've got $17 million in cap space. Obviously George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, pretty good offensive line, and they got the predicament of Jimmy Garoppolo in their system right now. But they also have Trey Lance, that's on the horizon, who has just a cannon. Julio's got one of the biggest catch radiuses in the NFL. He can cover up for a lot of Jimmy G's mistakes as well too. So really good fit for their offense.
And also that would reunite him with Kyle Shanahan, who you already mentioned was right.
Reunion with Kyle Shanahan is the absolute dream, and probably one of the biggest reasons for Julio to want to be in San Francisco. The problems with this one, sold a ton of draft capital to go and get Trey Lance, so they don't have that first round pick next year. So their second round pick, third round pick, which is the rumor of what now is going to get it done for a deal with Julio Jones, the second round pick, most likely. It doesn't. I don't know if they'll be able to, if they're willing to get rid of that, because their defense isn't the same defense that got them to the Super Bowl. They've lost a lot of those guys over the last year or two. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think of the 49ers getting it on Julio?
I think it makes a ton of sense. I think adding him to that offense would be lethal. I think in general, Kyle Shanahan is one of the he's the king of scheming guys open, right? Like I think, like, no disrespect to Deebo Samuel, he's a super versatile player and like a gadget player, but I feel like guys like that can make a lot of money playing for someone like Kyle Shanahan, because he's such a genius, right? Running that zone scheme, just finding ways to get guys open. It's so impressive. So then you throw in a guy like Julio to play with Deebo Samuel, who's a great player. And then you got Brandon Ayuk, who's a young receiver who I'm really high on. I mean, that is just a lethal trio right there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And Kittle, don't forget Kittle too, right? So they're going to control the middle of the field, and Julio out on the outside is able to take the top off the defense, or just get them a quick slant and run somebody over and get those yards after the catch for you too. So it's a dream right now to me. I don't think the 49ers actually pull the trigger on this. I think they either get outbid or they just get a little bit gun shy, just because they know they've got to kind of rebuild that defense through the draft in the next few years too. But go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say we got a viewer here. I don't know if it's my or me, so forgive me. I'm gonna go with my Cedar. Says Julio Jones in San Fran could be lethal. However, the Niners have to build for the future, and I doubt they part with their only second round pick. Super interesting, because I feel like the Niners overpaid for that pick, like to move up to take Trey Lance. I mean, at least the fact that all the speculation was that it was going to be Mac Jones just seemed mind-boggling when you consider that kind of the draft haul that Miami got to move back a little bit. And then he goes on to say, I don't think they're ready to win this year, but with that defense, the door is definitely opening. 2 to 3 years, they will be in the hunt. I see their timeline, like the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is a quarterback that they are clearly not sold on. and willing to give up on by moving all that draft capital to draft Trey Lance. The fact they made it to a Super Bowl with him, and you already alluded to the defense isn't quite as where it was at that point. But that just kind of shows how good they are. I think they're a really well-built team. I think Richard Sherman's a free agent. We'll see what happens there, but like I don't think their success on that side of the ball is dependent on Richard Sherman necessarily. The point is it's a super sound, functional regime they have there. John Lynch, former Buccaneer, shout out John Lynch, and Shanahan have done a great job, and they're always going to be a problem. So throwing a guy like Julio into the mix, it scares me as a Bucs fan, as an NFC rival.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Jimmy G piece, maybe they are able to flip Jimmy G for some draft capital, maybe.
He gets paid a lot too, though.
He gets paid a ton too, right? But June 1st, maybe that makes it a little bit easier on people. But yeah, that's the only way that I could see them doing it. But Julio Jones, whoever trades for Julio Jones, your timeline has just been accelerated a ton. So that's the give and take with this type of trade. Because if you trade for Julio Jones, maybe you don't care about your second round pick as much anymore. So, or your third round pick, or even building through the draft, because you're basically going into the Rams territory of, okay, we have to win now.
And I think they're going to be close to approaching that. They must believe in Trey Lance's ability to perform sooner than later, at least compared to a lot of the draft pundits and analysts who consider him more of a long-term prospect. I'm just trying to catch up on some of the messages. Harry Berg, what's up? Welcome to the big show. LFG, you guys rock. Welcome to Bucs Report. I appreciate that, Harry. We appreciate that. We appreciate you tuning in, my guy. Thanks for it. And yeah, man, we get lots of good comments coming in, lots of good feedback. I dig that. Feel free to keep chiming in with any questions you might have or opinions. I'll get to them as much as I can periodically while we try and churn through the content we've put together for tonight's episode. So sorry, Bo.
Oh, no, that's all good. I'm loving this engagement we're getting. This is sick. Number three on the list, Ben Kieran, Seattle Seahawks. This one's a little bit tougher.
There you go, Ben.
A little bit tougher. $7.2 million in cap space. And they don't have their first this year. They gave it up to get Jamal Adams. So they sent a 2021 round 1 and round 3 this year. And then next year, or next draft, they have a round 1 going out to the Jets as well too. So a little bit tougher, obviously, with that situation. But obviously, you can always find a way to create cap space with $7.2 million already on the books to absorb that $15 million hit. They're halfway there, basically. They do have a new OC in Shane Waldron, who's never called plays before. Coming out of the Rams system, I believe he was underneath Sean McVay. Sean McVay is placing a lot of head coaches in the league now already. He's building his tree. But
his former bosses are probably considered part of his coaching tree now because of how much everyone loves Sean McVay.
Yeah, no doubt, and he's our age as well too. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, he's going to be around for a long time. There's going to be a lot of guys who are from the Sean McVay tree coaching. So that it does concern me that Shane Waldron's never called plays before in a regular season game. Also, I think Pete Carroll. Go ahead.
I think this guy not calling plays before could be a good thing for the Seahawks because maybe they can kind of get away from that old school pound the rock every first 2 downs, and then let's have Russell Wilson scramble around and throw to one of our 2 dynamic receivers as opposed to structuring their offense around their strengths. Maybe.
That's what I was going to get at. I was going to say, like, it's tough to be the guy who has no experience calling plays before into a room with Pete Carroll, Super Bowl champion, who says we need to run the ball more effectively after he gets ousted from the playoffs last year. So it might be an uphill battle to get Pete off of that ledge, but yeah, I hope Seattle figures out a way to throw the ball on first down a little bit more often. The good thing for Julio is that you do get Russell Wilson, you do get DK Metcalf, you do get Tyler Lockett, plenty of one-on-ones in that offense, and Russ's ability to just keep plays alive, improvise on the go. Julio's built for a quarterback like that. Just literally, just the catch radius doesn't even come into play with Russ because he's got one of the most accurate deep balls in the league. it would be really cool to see him in Seattle.
Yeah, it would be fun. They have a lot of holes there though too, like with that team. Like I have,
Exactly.
like and like you already mentioned them sacrificing draft assets to acquire Jamal Adams, and their defense was so vulnerable last season.
It was
I mean,
awful.
especially the former Legion of Boom to abandon that side of the ball.
Yeah.
And whereas receivers are already a strength, we'll see. Let's see if they can throw to the guys who are there first before they worry about adding someone of Julio's caliber. That's my opinion, but it's certainly an interesting one. And anytime you pair a receiver like that with a quarterback like that, it's fun to consider, no doubt.
Yeah, it would. I like just from a fan entertainment mode, it would be awesome. But yeah, their defense has more holes than you can count. Bobby Wagner is basically the only guy on there, but I'm saying Bobby Wagner is the only guy that you love. But yeah, Bobby Wagner is really, really, really good at defense and really good at football in general. So he covers up a few of the holes. They would be even worse if for some reason he wasn't able to play all 17 games this year. But yeah, for Seattle, it would be a really like explosive offense. They'd be basically the Brooklyn Nets, and they have a ton of buzz going into tomorrow when it kind of heats up for the Julio trades. Apparently, Russ has been in contact with Julio. DK's been on social media vouching for him, trying to get him into Seattle as well too. So they're kind of like the media favorite right now to land Julio.
Right. Cool. All right. Who's next? Who else you got, Weez?
Yeah. Now we get interesting because at number 2, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. 19.8 million in cap space. They've got all the draft capital in the world. They don't have anything to. They haven't given away anything. It's just a perfect time. Basically, it would be the opposite of what they did in Seattle, where you have your rookie quarterback and you kind of build up the defense with the Legion of Boom. You're basically putting everything at the disposal of Justin Herbert and say, okay, you're on your rookie deal, and we're just going to speed up the timeline right now and try to go and get a Super Bowl. You're pairing Julio Jones with Keenan Allen and the perennially injured Mike Williams, but still, I think they have a good conversation to be into one of the best wide receiver rooms if you add Julio Jones to that. Pairing him with Keenan Allen would just be unreal.
Now, Johnny Dean, he hates hearing Bobby Wagner's name. Guy's been putting Levante David in the shade since he came into the league, and Levante David is a better linebacker. Love that, Johnny Dean. I love that take. No doubt Bobby Wagner is a stud, and Levante David is a stud. I wrote an article kind of profiling how exceptional he's been over at bucsbanter.ca. Johnny, I'd love for you to check that out because it ultimately details how perennially great Levante David is. We all know he's been overlooked, but when you actually, break down the numbers, it is really incredible. And he's such an example of a modern day linebacker because of his ability to cover, which is definitely something that isn't Bobby Wagner's strength. Bobby Wagner is more like that Levante David thumper in the middle. Devin White thumper in the middle against the run game, whereas Levante is far more dynamic, as we saw in the Super Bowl when he put the clamps on Travis Kelce, something the mainstream media all week leading up to the Super Bowl said wasn't possible. Kelce was going to abuse him, and Levante stepped up huge. So anytime I see someone standing up for Levante, I got to do it too. But also Bobby Wagner is absolutely a stud.
Yeah.
You're not wrong there, Bo.
No, yeah, I wasn't trying to take anything away from Levante. I know this is a Bucs podcast. But yeah, going back to it, like number 3 on my list, Los Angeles Chargers. What do you think? They were 6th in the league in passing attack last year with not that deep of a receiving room. They had Mike Williams out a bunch of games. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the Mike Williams thing is interesting because he's got so much talent. Like, since he was in college, those jump balls for Clemson in the title game, like that guy is like he's awesome when he's in, but he seems to be hurt all the time. The only thing is they just drafted a guy, Josh Palmer, out of Tennessee, who they're pretty high on.
Canadian,
Canadian boy out of Brampton, I believe.
yes, sir.
So, I mean, yeah, like for him to work with a guy like Herbert is clearly one of the going to be a star in this league. I don't think many people expected him to be as effective in the NFL in his rookie season as he was. he was just kind of viewed as the like prototypical quarterback, but kind of lacks the consistency and execution. And he threw all that out the window as soon as he stepped on an NFL field after Tyrod Taylor's lung got punctured by a team doctor.
By their own team. And we talked about that last time, but it's almost more of a testament to Justin Herbert, where it was literally hours before kickoff. They just said, "Hey, you're our one now." So yeah, I would love to see it, but you're right. Like they have a really good timeline though. And I was thinking about like the counter argument for it. They have a good timeline for Justin Herbert right now with the receivers that they have. I don't know if anyone remembers, but Jalen Guyton, I want to say his name was.
Guyton?
Jalen Guyton. When you guys played him, when the Bucs played the Chargers last year, he burned I think Sean Murphy Bunting on a seam route and scored the 72-yard touchdown, I think it was. He had a good year as the year went on as well too. Just looking at his game logs and looking at some of his highlights from last year, he could be a big player for them. They're wide receiver 3 going into this season. And yeah, like you said, Josh Palmer coming into that receiver dream as well too. They've got a lot of young talent on both sides of their ball. When you look at their defense as well too, so they could really they have a good timeline for Justin Herbert. I just think it would be fun to see Julio Jones. They have the cap space to do it. They have the draft picks to do it. It would be really cool to see him just catapult the Chargers into the conversation with the Chiefs of who's going to win that division.
Yeah, they're going to be. You're right. Like their timeline is really nicely set up right now, and you don't want to like jump the gun and rush anyone in there. Like they had a great draft too. Like Asante Samuel and Rashawn Slater. Like the left tackle and a potential like number 1 corner. Like Derwin James is going to be back healthy, playing safety. Well, we'll see how long he's healthy for. But
knocking on wood there.
Yeah.
I love Derwin James. We both love Derwin James.
Yeah, and a lot of people watching this did too, I'm sure, coming out of Florida State. So let's keep rolling though, Bo. Let's get through your potential landing spots, and so we can it's tough to follow along with all these great comments and then stay focused on the good stuff you're delivering here.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I've got my one more, and I maybe let's run through my honorable mentions before we get to the number 1 spot. Honorable mention to the Buffalo Bills. I just would love to see Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen have Julio Jones on their team. There's an expectation, I think, going into next year for the Bills that they're going to run the ball a little bit more effectively. But if that's not their focus, adding Julio Jones would be just electrify this offense. I don't think it happens. They already spent on Emmanuel Sanders 1 year, $6 million. They need to free about $11 million in cap space. They've got about 4.6 right now. So it would be tough to add them in there. But they're on my honorable mention list. And then I've also got the aforementioned Green Bay Packers. Basically not the dream spot for a star NFL player right now, but if you ever wanted to put together a pipe dream to make Aaron Rodgers happy, team Julio Jones up with Devontae Adams and have the best wide receiver duo in recent history. I think Aaron Rodgers might show up to a mini camp after a trade like that goes down.
That would make things very, very interesting. And I know we got a couple Packers guys tuned in. I've been getting a text from a Packers buddy, Connor Ofield. Shout out Connor. He's been sorry about what Scotty Miller did to Kevin King on the corner there. He's still mad at me about that, but it's nice to see he was tuned in. We'll see if he's still listening because I'll hear about that comment. And our guy Ben Kieran earlier weighing in. He's a big Packers fan. So I'm sure – I wonder what they would think about that, to be honest. Like they seem – like Ben earlier, I showed it when we were talking. Ben Kieran suggested – he thinks the Packers should call Rodgers' bluff and just wait it out. He compared it to the Kobe Shaq thing. The comment's too far up, so I'm not going to go searching for it. But that would be crazy. Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, and Julio Jones. I mean, like you said, that would form the most formidable receiver duo in recent memory, and just happened to be one of the greatest quarterbacks during our time as well, who's he's the MVP of the league. So that's something. And I love the Bills scenario. I don't understand why the Bills should get creative. They should talk to Bucs cap guru Mike Greenberg and see what they got to do to get under the cap to make it work, because that could be, for a team like the Bills, that could be the missing link for them, in my opinion.
Me too.
You know, like
that changes the AFC. That changes the AFC completely to me. That makes the Bills the favorite, like clearly the favorite to me. I would just love to see the Bills get creative. Nobody's talking about the Bills getting into this, so
I know
there must be something behind that. So yeah, it's too bad, but yeah, Josh Allen, kind of another perfect quarterback, can extend plays. Julio can find an open spot in the field, and after the catch, he's one of the toughest wide receivers to bring down.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hear it.
I've got my number one, the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh,
$9.7 million in cap space. So they got to get creative, restructure, figure out a way to make it happen. But they've got the draft capital to do it. They've got their first round pick or second round pick. They've got all of their picks next year. They also have some extra picks in the third, the fourth, and the fifth. So they can make a Godfather offer to the Falcons and say, okay, we need Julio Jones. You have Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson necessitates an 8 to 9 man box on basically every play. So that will give Julio the 101s that he wants and he needs. And again, Lamar Jackson loves to go off script. He can keep plays alive. He's going to find Julio down the field. And the one thing that the biggest knock on Lamar Jackson is accuracy downfield and the accuracy in the passing game in general. Julio solves a lot of those mistakes. Honestly, he covers that up. You can keep developing Lamar. Julio's going to catch anything that's in his radius. So I would just absolutely love to see it. Their OC, offensive coordinator, just going back to the very start of this, where we're saying we'd love to see Julio with a creative offensive coordinator. Greg Roman's got the job over there in Baltimore. Not necessarily known for unlocking star wide receivers. He was a tight ends coach. Obviously, he worked with Colin Kaepernick when he was in San Francisco. So big run game guy, but he's talked. The most recent tweets that I saw from the Ravens site was that they were looking to bring a little bit more of a schematic change to their offense this year, and nothing says schematic change more than Julio Jones in that Baltimore Ravens offense. So that's my number one destination for Julio Jones. Baltimore Ravens, they've already got the defense for it. They've got the picks, and you have Lamar Jackson. And just before I'd let you jump in here, you have to pay Lamar Jackson too, right? He's coming off his rookie deal. What better way to make those dollars that you're going to pay Lamar Jackson worthwhile than to give him the weapons that he needs? You're already doing it in the draft. You picked up Sammy Watkins in free agency, but give him that number one alpha dog receiver who is just going to go out there and catch absolutely anything Lamar puts in the air. So I think some people are saying, okay, well, they got to pay Lamar, so they can't pay Julio. No, you can find a way to make it work. Just pay Lamar and make that money that much more valuable by having the weapons in place for Lamar. Because once you pay Lamar, you're not going to be able to add that many more people to your that many more stars to your roster in free agency.
Yeah, and the Ravens are an interesting one. I didn't expect that to be number one, so I kind of like it. It's kind of off the board, a little outside of the box, as my boy Bo tends to do. They drafted Rashad Bateman. They got Hollywood Brown there, and I think Hollywood Brown playing in like number 2 receiver, number 3 receiver is where is meant to play. Like, he's not meant to be a number 1 receiver. So, I mean, these are the takes you're going to get a lot of. Like my Cedar Jackson can't be trusted outside because his accuracy is atrocious. You'd be surprised looking at his passing numbers. Obviously, the arm talent is the question, and his strength is in his legs. No one's going to deny that. But I do think that the Baltimore Ravens coaching staff and executives are true believers in Lamar Jackson's talent. And, you know, like you said, they're going to pony up. They're going to pay him. So how else are you going to prove to the world you can throw the ball if you don't put the pieces around him where he can throw it to? Like, you know what I mean? So
it makes it that much easier for him too, right? Like, it's
exactly.
Julio Jones. He's catching balls that other wide receivers don't even think about making an effort for. I know, I understand Lamar's got his accuracy needs to be worked on. It's atrocious, is more than fair from what we've seen from him so far in his career. But I think when you have a quarterback like that who you're locking up to be the future of your franchise, what's the point if you don't have the receivers to get it done? You can't rely. You can, like, he's Lamar Jackson, so he's going to make the run game work, but that's not going to work forever. If you're going to pay him all that money, lock him up for all those years, he's not a running back. You have to give him the wide receivers.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then the only two teams, Bo, that I have a personal interest in that I would like Cleveland has $21 million in cap space.
Yeah.
OBJ coming off the injury. Jarvis Landry, like that's a team that took a massive step this year. They're really well positioned on offense, led by Ed Stefanski. Their success is going to hinge on Baker Mayfield's ability to execute and limit his mistakes. But that roster is so impressive on both sides of the ball. They're absolutely stacked. I was shocked to see they have upwards of $20 million in cap space. I mean, go for it now if you're the Cleveland Browns. Make a compelling trade offer for Julio Jones. Throw him in the mix with Jarvis and OBJ. Are you kidding me? They got great tight ends. They got Austin Hooper. They got David Njoku. Like that, they already have a top tier receiving group. Like, why not just do it? That's the number one for me that I think the Browns should make the push. Who knows how Julio would feel about that?
I had them on my list too when I was first going through this yesterday, but I just started to think about all the drama just integrating OBJ. If you add Julio to that mix, I just don't know what that does for that locker room. Not that I think Julio. Yeah, I don't think Julio involved, but I just think you're adding extra people that OBJ can blame for not getting the ball and just be a distraction. It's more OBJ than Julio, like absolutely on my end. Like I just want to see it work for the Browns. I think they've already got a good enough roster that they don't need to sacrifice as much to go and get Julio. They were close to beating the Chiefs last year, but yeah, Julio definitely makes it that much easier on Baker. And I if they didn't have OBJ, I would be like, okay, I don't even think it'd be a discussion. They obviously have the draft capital. They have their first and second, third. They've got extra pick in the fourth, extra pick in the seventh. Like they've got all of their picks. They could easily make a Godfather offer to the Falcons, but I don't know. I couldn't bring myself there. I just want to see the Browns do it with the roster they have because I'm super high on them.
Fair. And then the only other team I think is worth mentioning, because there has been some chatter about, them being interested, and we have all seen how aggressive Bill Belichick was in free agency, is, of course, the New England Patriots, $20 million in cap space still. Brought over a bunch of guys, but I think the receiver position, it still leaves a lot to be desired. And he obviously loves Julio. Like Julio almost took a Super Bowl from them if it wasn't for that miraculous 28-3 comeback. So that's just another team that I thought was worth mentioning. But that's good stuff.
The only thing with that one is that I don't think that Julio can catch a ball after it bounces. So that takes Cam Newton out of the running, right?
Who knows? Maybe they throw Mac Jones in there sooner. Mac Jones can get it to him in there. But that's a valid chirp of Cam. Lamar Jackson's got a lot more arm than Cam Newton. Like, maybe Cam can throw it. I don't know. We'll see. But
we'll see with Cam. But I'm not super. I'm obviously cheering for Cam, but I'm not positive that he's going to be remarkably different than last year.
Yeah, I'm not cheering for anyone in the NFL to fail aside from Carson Wentz.
And the New Orleans Saints.
Well, sorry, team-wise, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What am I saying? Yeah.
I got one more before we move on. This is like, let's just go from like, okay, we're operating in reality right now, right? Let's just go to this alternate universe. We're all Bucs fans here. Let's have a quiet moment together. What would you say if I told you Chris Godwin did not get the franchise tag at the start of this free agency, and now the Bucs might have, let's say, around $15 million in cap space right now? Would you be happier or more confident going into the year if you were on the table at these Julio Jones negotiations trying to make something happen, or or are you happy with what you have with Chris Godwin and the continuity there?
Yeah, I mean, as enticing as the concept of Julio Jones, and don't worry, guys, Bo's just trying to start a ruckus amongst Bucs fans. All right, I bring him on because he's objective. He's not a true Bucs fan, but yeah, like as enticing on paper as it is, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. There's just the continuity is too important with the receiving core, and I think Chris Godwin is a slot receiver. Like that's where he's been moved to. He plays the Larry Fitz role for the Bucs, and he does it damn well. Like AB lines up on the outside more often than not, where he actually, despite his height, right? Everyone assumes like AB must be a slot guy, Godwin must be a wideout. No, Godwin shifted to the slot role, and he's so well suited for it. He's such a good blocker. He's so gritty over the middle. A lot of casual fans just saw Godwin in the playoffs this past year with his broken hand, and he was not like, you never see Godwin drop balls. Bucs fans know Godwin doesn't drop balls, but he did in the postseason because he had like pins in his hand still.
Yeah,
I love
shocker.
Yeah. Sorry, Bo. It was a valiant attempt. I couldn't possibly admit that publicly, even if I thought it deep down that I'd prefer Julio over Godwin. So let's move on.
Send me a text. You can send me a text later. It's no big deal. But yeah, the idea of the Falcons handing Julio Jones to a NFC South team is probably insane in itself. But I just like taking a look at, hey, maybe I could get you to admit something on the record right now.
Yeah. I appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
Okay. So this episode is titled Top Receiver Groups in the NFL. That's what we planned on. We're almost at an hour and we haven't even got to it yet.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So whatever, we got lots of time in our time slot, so it's fine. We'll roll with it and see how this goes. But what we want to do now is Bohdan and I are going to unveil our top 5 wide receiver groups in the NFL. And some of our discussion thus far has already incited some contentious differences in opinion, which I can completely respect. But I would expect there to be lots of chatter involving this because this is such a what's the word? It's totally subjective, the top receiver groups in the NFL, right? So in terms of so it's very challenging to create a clear formula for what makes the best receiving group in the league. You need to consider like elite talent, depth at the position, versatility in terms of the types of receivers assembled on a specific roster. So it is a very subjective process, and I would expect there to be some differences between Bo's list, my list, and surely any of you listening or viewing your own list.
Yeah, let's see it in the comments. We're gonna go through this pretty slow. So as we're going through it, I think we got a top 5 each. So when we're on 5, throw out what you think your 5 is in the comments there. Yeah,
absolutely feel free to chime in. What teams have the best wide receiver rooms in the NFL? I think we're gonna count down from 5 to 1. In terms of my
receiver rooms, though, right?
Wide receiver rooms.
Receiver.
No, wide receiver. Okay, great. So we've already demonstrated a clear difference in opinion.
Fair.
For me, the consideration of tight ends isn't meant to be a focal point if we're just talking about the wide receiver rooms, because I think we might rank tight ends later at another episode or something. So I, for my personal ranking, really neglected the tight end position, even though that's like they are, especially there's some dynamic receivers who would bring certain receiving tight ends who would bring certain groups way up. But for me, I only use tight end as a tiebreaker, a little bit of a bonus. I want to talk like wide receivers for the most part. So it's worth mentioning and could be a tiebreaker for me, but it isn't something that I'm trying to consider with this. So Justin Holman, before I get going here with my number 5, the Bucs have the best wide receiver group in the NFL, hands down. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be shocked when I get to my number 1. I don't even think it's particularly close at all. I completely agree with you, Justin. Appreciate the input, my man. I had a lot of trouble with my 5th position. So we're gonna count down. We'll start with each of our 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I have the Dallas Cowboys. So their wide receiver room: Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. Amari Cooper is what he is. He's talented. He's a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. The big thing for me here is I'm big on CeeDee Lamb. I think he's going to be a star in the NFL, even though he was really not used how I would have expected this past year. in Mike McCarthy's systems. Shocker. I think McCarthy's
Can't really
terrible.
call it a system. Yeah, can't even call it a system.
But regardless, the top three of Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup is really strong. But it was really hard for me to decide. Now, before anyone attacks me on here, it was really hard for me to decide between the Cowboys and the Bengals. Yes, the Cincinnati Bengals with this fifth spot. I went back and forth on it a lot. I definitely like the Bengals group of receivers better for the future, potentially even just after this season. But for this season alone, the added experience of Cooper and Gallup combined with CeeDee Lamb and the potential I think he has with a year under his belt already compared to like Jamar Chase being a rookie who's the top notch, who will be the top dog in Cincinnati, is the biggest difference for me. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, those are guys in Cincinnati who are already really solid. T. Higgins is super young, bit of a touchdown machine. I expect the Bengals to have a dynamic receiving corps moving forward. Pair that up with Joe Burrow, a quarterback I'm super high on, and the chemistry carrying over between him and Jamar Chase. Look out, Jamar Chase is going to be an absolute stud game breaker right away. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to ride with the Dallas Cowboys as the fifth best receiving corps in the NFL.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all, man. I was on the brink of having them in my 5 spot as well too. I do really like. I love Amari Cooper. Honestly, like I know that he doesn't get a ton of recognition around the NFL, but I think around NFL fans, I might say, I think he keeps our defensive coordinators up at night because he gets the ball and he can make things happen, and he's got great hands too. I don't hate that at all.
Great hands and great feet. Amari Cooper's kind of unique. Like it's not like he has one athletic defining trait that you can prepare for. Like he's going to jump over you or something. It's more that he's super crafty with his footwork. And like you said, he has great hands. Polish route runner.
Yeah. My number 5 though was the Cleveland Browns we were just talking about. Elite talent with OBJ and Jarvis Landry for sure. I like Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones as well too. I thought that he was actually pretty instrumental for them in their postseason run last year. And then they also have Austin Hooper as well, and David Njoku, one of my favorite tight ends in the league. They were only 24th in passing attack last year without OBJ for the majority of the year. Super heavy on the run in Cleveland with Nick Chubb and who's their running
Kareem
back?
Hunt.
Kareem Hunt. Sorry. So yeah, they were obviously a more balanced attack, but I think they just with OBJ and Jarvis Landry just such elite talents. They could easily be top 5 passing attack next year.
Yeah, and then throw Julio Jones into the mix, and we're really talking. Eh?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, that segues nicely. My number 4, Cleveland was 4th on my list, just ahead of Dallas and Cincinnati, shortly behind them. And then, Rashard Higgins proved to have a lot of wiggle to him as well when OBJ went down. So I like Higgins. OBJ is still OBJ. Say what you will. Yeah, he's been hurt, but I mean he's a dynamic player. And I think him and Landry is a problem. And then, like you said, that tight end room was a major tiebreaker for me. Hooper, Njoku, and Harrison Bryant, they love. So, but also they got a little depth there. They drafted in the 3rd round Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. This guy runs a 4.25. And he's more than just a burner. He's not just a line up and run faster than you. He's actually got some receiver skill to him. So his name is worth bringing up as well. Like it just adds to the depth there. And he could be a player for them. But why don't you take us right into your 4th, since my 4th was the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, the number 4 on my list, I think, is going to shock a lot of people. But I think they had a great offseason and free agency and the draft. I've got at number 4 the New York Football Giants. Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Kadarius Toney. They also picked up John Ross, who is another perennially hurt guy. As a bonus, I have Evan Ingram, who I think is one of the best tight ends in the league. Just a step below the Kittles and Kelce's of the world, but I think he has the potential to be another game breaker in that tight end spot. the problem with Daniel Jones getting the ball to all of these guys, but there's no shortage of weapons in New York anymore. 29th in the NFL last year, but they really addressed their passing game in the offseason. I just want to give them a little bit of props. So I've got them at number 4 on my list, expecting really big things, especially from Kenny Galladay now that he's on the big stage in New York. So, and Kadarius Toney, I think the guy that in the draft we were talking about quite a bit, Urban Meyer admitted that he wanted to get as well too. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? New York Giants at number 4. It feels weird even saying.
Yeah, I mean, you're really going on a limb here, Boa. So I agree that they have a bunch of talent, and like I love Kadarius Toney. I think he's going to be a star, and I think the Galladay signing is a great one. So I couldn't agree more that they are putting together a solid group. But I think to have them in the top 5 receiving groups in the NFL is borderline insane at this point of the season. And yeah, I mean, you may just need to step out now, bro. Like that might be it for you.
I have this. I think I just saw a comment right there that said that you were drinking shine out of a spaghetti, like a mason jar there. So yeah, I've got. I don't know if they can see it in the back, but yeah, maybe a few more shots would do say tonight for sure.
Yeah, I just think it's too early. Like I think the Giants are going to be good. When we do our NFC East preview, I think people will be surprised at how high I actually am on the Giants.
Yeah,
I think they have a legit shot to come out of that division as the best team in that division. Potentially. I think the only thing faster than John Ross's 40 time is how quick they get the gurney to the ambulance after he busts a different ligament in his leg, because he's never, ever healthy. So his speed or potential doesn't really matter. So yeah, Galladay and Toney is wicked. Evan Ingram is super injury prone, but he is definitely like, he's a guy I'll let you count as a receiver because that's what he is. He's a pass catcher. But again, we'll see. I think I could probably pick 10 receiving groups I'd like more than the Giants. At least 7. Yeah.
Okay.
No, 9. I could pick 9. Yeah.
They're in the top 10 though. And I think if they're taking a step forward, like I think the Giants they're going to need to do it through the air. As much as I love Saquon, I have a feeling that they're going to use the production that they get from Saquon to really open up their passing attack. So especially with Galladay taking off the top, I think they could be really good next year.
Yeah. Interesting. No question. Now, so I'm going to go to my number 3 then. My number 3. So I had Dallas at 5, Cleveland Browns at 4. The number 3 most impressive receiving corps to me, receiver group, is the Atlanta Falcons. We talked a whole bunch about Julio Jones off the top, his potential destinations, because it's more or less we're assuming he's going to get moved. But at this moment, he is still an Atlanta Falcon. And I have to, like, I'm sitting here thinking if as a Buccaneer fan, a diehard Buccaneer fan, I have to trade our receiving core for another and just insert them. I can't put Atlanta lower than 3 on my list. Like with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, I mean, Julio is as dominating of a receiving force as there is in the game. And he's an automatic double team. He can beat you deep. He can go over the middle. You talked about his catch radius. He makes tough contested catches. He does it all. So that's what it is. But then you're pairing him with Calvin Ridley, who is extremely dynamic in his own right and potentially going to enter the conversation as one of the top 10 receivers he could in the entire league. So just those two alone together is quite the tandem. Russell Gage is fine as a third receiver. They don't have much depth at the position. Tajay Sharp is the next guy in line there. But they drafted Kyle Pitts, the most transcendent receiving tight end prospect in the history of football, in the history of planet Earth. So in this case, I need to bring his name into the mix, and that is just stupid. So in terms of receivers, I have to put the Falcons at number 3.
Yeah, we're super high on Kyle Pitts going into the draft, and even in all their draft recaps. He's a pass catcher. I'll give you that for sure. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get them in my top 5, even though they still have Julio. I'm already in that space. When I was doing all my prep for this, I was like, oh, Julio's gone, and I just couldn't bring them into my mind frame for the top 5 wide receiver groups, just because I'm just thinking of them not having Julio. But you're right, Calvin Ridley's a monster, and I think he's going to be around. He's going to be a guy who keeps Bucs fans up at night. In maybe not next year, but maybe the year after, in the next 2 or 3 years from now. provided they get a new quarterback. But yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. Like the Falcons could be very good from a receiving standpoint.
Good question from Johnny Dean. Are you only basing these receiving corps on the starters, or do you include the entire corps of receivers on the team? So off the top, Johnny, I said, or maybe I didn't even say it because I was just, but absolutely receiving depth matters for my criteria. I'm thinking, but in some cases it can matter more so than others. So I just talked about the Falcons having like limited depth, but their top two of Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley combined with someone like Kyle Pitts, that to me is enough to push them over a team like the Cleveland Browns, who have some really good depth at that position. So hopefully that answers your question, Johnny Dean.
Yeah, I was going along the same way. Like to me, it was just like the elite talent. It was the guys that keep defensive coordinators up at night. That makes me like value the wide receiver room a little bit more. But then yeah, the bonus is depth. Bonus is the tight end that opens up things for your receivers as well too. So yeah, it's there's no way to say, okay, this is the best. It's not a statistical. We're not going through the stats and being like, okay, this is the best team based on this particular metric. It's just, okay, I think that these guys are the most talented group, and I think this team actually has a little bit more depth that overcomes a bit of talent. So yeah, it is tough. It's super subjective, but that's why it's a podcast. That's why we're all listening.
No doubt. Who's up here, Bo? I just did Atlanta. Who's your number 3?
Oh, number 3, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. Speaking of guys who keep defensive coordinators up at night, they've got 2 of them in Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, in my opinion. Even James Washington can take over a game every once in a while. They signed back Juju Smith-Schuster as well too, so maybe didn't have the greatest year last year, but got a lot of eyes from defensive coordinators last year, and it really opened up things for those other 3 guys. So I think the Steelers still have one of the best receiver rooms. I don't know if they drafted anyone this year at wide receiver, but I feel like the entire league is always put on notice as soon as they draft a guy now, just because they've been so successful at drafting receivers and developing receivers in their recent history with Ben as well too. So I'm giving Eric Ebron the benefit of the doubt that he's going to stay healthy as well. They're 7th in the league last year with not that great of an offensive line, basically 0 running game as well for most of the year. So yeah, they're going to be as good as their offensive line allows them to be, but I still think that they'll be one of the top wide receiver groups in the next year.
And having, like, don't forget too, this is something I didn't consider at all, which was running backs who catch the ball, but they're going to have Najee Harris now as well. So that's not only going to improve their running game, but he's also a guy who can catch the rock too. So Roethlisberger's got no excuse after this season with that collection of pass catchers. They got great depth at the position, like you said. For me, the only reason I actually kept them off my top 5 is because for me, they had a number of good guys, but they don't have anyone I would consider truly elite, which if I'm going to have what I consider the best receiving core, I want one guy who's just such an issue for the other team that worst case, if everyone else goes down, you got to deal with him on your own. And it's still a problem for a defensive coordinator, but I totally get the Steelers being number 3 on your list for sure.
They just weren't I think that goes back to last year. They just weren't predictable at all, but they were just always having these ridiculous passing games. It was just one quarter, it might be Chase Claypool. Next quarter, it might be Deontay Johnson. It was like as soon as a defensive coordinator got comfortable and being like, okay, I think I'm going to take this guy away, they would just switch it up. And Ben was able to get the ball to these guys last year. But I agree with you. Like they don't have that name that just sticks out. Like
might be Claypool. It might be Claypool.
Yeah, we're a little bit biased to the Canadian guys too, but yeah, I hope it's Claypool. Like I love watching him play.
He has the skills.
Yeah, he has the skills too. He has the skills. He has all of the he has a prototype is what I would say. The guy on the outside that can go up and catch balls over top of people. Seems like an alpha. But yeah, the idea for me was that they just have so many guys that they don't have a guy that automatically that number 1 guy that jumps off the roster, but they have 3 guys who are legitimately can give you the production of a number 1 receiver. They're just not asking each one of them to do it every game. So yeah, I think that was one where it was more depth. They may not have the talent, but they do have a lot of talent. But they do, the thing that sticks out for me is their depth.
Right. It's completely reasonable. I'm fully in support of that one. I mean, that's a really solid receiving core. We'll see how Big Ben holds up. All right.
I
So
took a huge swing with the Giant. I took a huge swing with the Giants, so I was like, okay, I gotta reel it in here.
Yeah. Way to reel it in. You're doing good. You're on your way back to credible status. So I started off. I had the Cowboys, not the Mavericks. Dallas Cowboys at 5. I had the Browns at 4. I had the Falcons at 3. My number 2 best receiving position group in the NFL I have is the Arizona Cardinals. I think, first of all, top 3 receiver, potentially top 5 for sure in the NFL, in DeAndre Hopkins. And then you combine that with strong complementary depth at the same position around him. And that to me is worthy of this high of a rating. Christian Kirk is no joke. He's a legit, really solid number 2 receiver. And Rondell Moore, who they drafted out of Purdue, I mean, we've talked about him on the pod. I wrote about him at length at bucsbanter.ca. If you haven't visited bucsbanter.ca, make sure you do. Lots of quality stuff up there, especially on a lot of the draft prospects. And it's all Bucs focus for the most part as well. But Rondell Moore is an absolute freak, and I think he's going to fit so nicely with Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins. He's like this small, explosive scat back receiver who he can beat a guy deep, like a short fly route, like a short receiver running a fly route, like a Scotty Miller, for example, as just a straight burner. But he's also got tons of wiggle and elusiveness. So like he jumps higher than LeBron James and Zion Williamson. He runs a sub 4.3 40. He's built like a brick house. Like he found the perfect home in Arizona. I know you've been very critical of Cliff Kingsbury, Bo, but we're just talking receivers and then throw in AJ Green. I mean, I think most of us have written off AJ Green, but who knows? Like if he's gonna have single coverage all day, and he was playing beat up still coming off that injury last season, maybe he's got something left in the tank. They do not have any depth or anything quality at tight end, which I think could be a problem. Like their tight end depth chart is Max Williams and Darrell Daniels. So, I mean, that to me is interesting. Like, what are you going to roll out? No tight end sets. But again, my formula, I was focusing on the wide receiver position. Okay. I don't have the Kansas City Chiefs on my list. They are not on my top 5. If I was counting tight ends, if this was just pass catching or offenses, then they'd be way near the top. But Kelsey's not in the mix for me, so they don't deserve to be because he's such a factor there. And then Andy Isabella is entering his 2nd year, and a guy Keyshawn Johnson entering his 3rd year. Not the Keyshawn Johnson, and no relation to the former Buccaneer great Keyshawn Johnson, but that is why I think the Arizona Cardinals are in my opinion, the 2nd best receiving group in the NFL.
Yeah, it's tough though, right? I think especially with Kyler there, he makes it easier for you to get one-on-ones just because you're going to need to keep an extra guy in the box to take care of him, to hopefully take care of him. He doesn't seem like he's easy to catch at by any means, but yeah, I can't argue with Nuke. Like DeAndre Hopkins is so good that it should propel any receiver room that he's in to be in the top 5. But I didn't get there with them. I think you're crazy to not have the Chiefs in your top 5. I've got the Chiefs. I rejigged my list here. I got the Chiefs at number 2. Tyreek Hill, Nicole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, even Byron Pringle was a guy I didn't even know last year. I remember asking you, like, should I be worried about this guy when I was trying to think about a Browns bet? And then obviously Travis Kelce figured into this for me as well too. They're so fast. Nicole Hardman obviously just one of the unofficial fastest NFL person in the league. I have to say person because they invited Devin White, who still beat who came in last in that. Who did Devin White?
He ran faster than Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, it's insane. I also the Vikings. I had the Vikings as an honorable mention as well too. So shout out to them.
Which they did.
Yeah, they could have easily taken my New York Giants spot as even. But yeah, I got the Chiefs at number 2. I almost had them at number 1 just off of the game breaking ability of Tyreek Hill. I just think that he's just he's just so fast. Mahomes kind of figures into this as well too. So maybe these aren't the perfect wide receiver room rankings on my part, but he's just so fast and so shifty, and just as soon as he gets the ball, you're nervous. There's no point in the game that Tyreek Hill has the ball that the other team isn't just absolutely terrified that he's going to score. And that if that's not elite wide receiving talent, then I don't know what is. But yeah, Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman off the top, Demarcus Robinson as well too, as just a game-breaking speed guy. Just the fastest wide receiver room in the league, if nothing else. And then you add Travis Kelce to that as a pass catcher. They have to be number 2 on the list.
Right. So, I mean, I won't deny their speed, and I certainly won't deny Tyreek Hill's greatness. Obviously, there's some difference because I was trying my best to take the tight end position out of the equation, and I am like, Travis Kelce's talent is incredible. I bet on Travis Kelce over yards and receptions like every week last year, and it was a fruitful experience, similar to betting over on Devin White tackles. So I can respect that. But with that being said, if Patrick Mahomes is not their quarterback, and if Travis Kelce is not in the equation, which according to mine, if this is just the receiver room, then neither of those guys should be in the equation. So the question is, so then for me, it's Tyreek Hill. Yes. Great. Exceptional. Totally elite. Byron Pringle, McCole Hardman, no Sammy Watkins anymore either. Like those are just guys. Like they're not, like they're just guys like Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, like, who are way down our depth chart are comparable, if not better than those types of players, in my opinion. That's a little bit of home cooking, but just trying to throw out some names. I don't believe in those guys as individual players is what I'm saying.
It's more than fair. Yeah, and I think the Mahomes thing gives them the benefit of the doubt, just because I haven't seen them catch passes from anyone else. I saw Tyreek Hill catch a pass from Chad Henne and it won them a playoff game. That at least they got that. So it's not much, but the way it stands right now to me is just like those wide receivers are so good. Are the Chiefs better with the Cardinals wide receiver room? I don't know. Maybe they are. I don't know. If you swap those 2 wide receiver rooms, I don't know.
Well, if Kelce's still there, then I think it's unanimously a yes, they are better. If you're swapping DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Rondell Moore in for Tyreek Hill and those guys, because then you still got a burner like Rondell Moore, Christian Kirk. But that's my opinion. This is subjective. It's all for fun, and that's part of why we do it. And in your defense, you can't hold it against them that Patrick Mahomes is there.
Exactly.
So I get that. Okay, number 1. So for me, number 5 was the Cowboys, narrowly edging out the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 4 was the Cleveland Browns. Number 3 was the Atlanta Falcons. Number 2 was the Arizona Cardinals. And kick me off the podcast, kick me off Bucs Report right now if I don't say the number 1 receiving group in the NFL unanimously. I'll say it with conviction. I will yell it from the rooftops on Memorial Day all the way from Canada. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have undoubtedly the top of the cream of the crop wide receivers in the NFL. Okay. Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin. This receiving group has everything you need and more. It has star power. It has deep threats, speed, quickness, reliable hands, route runners over the middle, blocking, versatility, depth, absolutely everything. I already mentioned Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson. Those are our 4th and 5th receivers alone at that position. We just drafted Jalen Darden, who has explosive potential, but I'm not about to tout his name. He hasn't done a thing yet, and who knows, right? He's a 4th-round pick out of North Texas, so I'm not going to be delusional, even though I do expect really good things from Jalen Darden in the future. And then if you're to consider the tight end group as well, we got the greatest tight end in the history of the sport, who is still very productive, and I expect to be equally, if not more so, this season, just like how I feel about Antonio Brown, because he's got another year under his belt with this offense. OJ Howard, whose career was trending so nicely, and he appeared to be showing such great chemistry with Tom Brady early on last season. Unfortunately, he's coming back from a torn Achilles, but OJ Howard with 1 Achilles is still potentially better than a lot of tight ends in the NFL. For example, the team I just mentioned, Arizona Cardinals. Who is Max Williams? I don't know. But OJ Howard Rob Gronkowski, just to throw those names out there, even though I've neglected that position into my consideration. That is my long-winded, with a few breaths taken, explanation of why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have undoubtedly the best receiving group in the league.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I've got them at number 1 too, and it's not just because it's the Bucs podcast; it's because it's the right decision. Mike Evans, just I can't get enough of watching Mike Evans play football. He's unbelievable. I just feel like he's exactly, if you were going to just draw up a wide receiver in today's game, that's exactly who you draw up as your number 1. Same, like just around the same. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure all our listeners understand this is objective information we're getting from Bo here. So he's not a Bucs fan. He is just a true NFL fan his whole life. So he doesn't have a lean any which way. He does not cheer for the Bucs, and that's no reason to cast him aside. That makes him a valuable contributor to the quality of this show. Okay, because I want to hear. So this is unbiased perspective you're getting. Please continue, because I'm loving every minute of it, Bohdan.
Totally. And yeah, Chris Godwin as well. Talking about some of the stickiest hands in the league, like absolutely shocked every time he dropped the ball in the postseason. Like even the announcers were just like, "This does not happen. This is like basically never happens." And yeah, one of those tough. Like if you think of a wide receiver 2 who is in your slot and is willing to go and chip whatever linebacker in your run game, he is an unbelievable blocker down the field as well too. So that's taking away from what he does as a pass catcher, how good of a blocker he is. So yeah, they are really interesting to see how good their team is. Like, because on any other roster, or let's say if Tom Brady doesn't come to your team last year, I think you still would have seen whoever you had at quarterback looking at Tyler Johnson and young Scooter, Scotty Miller, over the top. Just those are 2 very, very good wide receivers who would end up being number 3s or number 2s in a lot of different teams. So those are that's a really, really good wide receiver room in itself, from a depth standpoint, from an elite talent standpoint. I haven't even talked about Antonio Brown yet. This is it's a really unbelievable thing that they've built in Tampa Bay. I think down the line we'll go back and just talk about the team building aspect of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the reason why they're in the position they are right now. But yeah, you've got 5 receivers that could be starters on any given Sunday. So that's no other team in the NFL has that right now.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches. Well said, Bo. I totally agree, obviously. That's dope to hear you lay it out like that again, because I know you're not biased any which way. So that's why I like to hear it. Helps justify my take, and I'm sure the same perspective that everyone here has. And yeah, Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller both coming up with huge catches in the postseason at crucial moments. Was really cool, and just kind of speaks to the clutch gene that some of those boys have. And hopefully we find a way to get more snaps to those gentlemen. We'll see what happens.
If I can just jump in, like the wide receiver room is basically why Tom Brady's in Tampa Bay. Like if he looked around the league, which he did, and said, "I want to go to Tampa Bay," I don't think anyone, like at the end of that season, when he was still a New England Patriot, nobody had the Bucs on their list. But once he actually sat down and looked at all the rosters, looked at all the cap space, looked at all the draft capital, he picked the Bucs. And one of the top reasons was Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That I 100% believe that in my mind. So that's after watching them with Jameis Winston as well too. So that's it speaks for itself when you have the greatest quarterback of all time basically looking at your wide receiver room and being like, "Yeah, I want to play with those guys."
Yeah, I mean, that's when that confirmed for me how intelligent Tom Brady was, because he could have, let's be real, the Buccaneers are the losingest franchise in professional sports history from a winning percentage. But when he chose to come to Tampa, I was like, okay, he is smart enough to know, because we knew, all Bucs fans knew how talented that group was. Just Jameis Winston's erratic behavior as a quarterback, unfortunately, cost us too many victories single-handedly. So that's cool. Glad to see we both finished with the Bucs at number 1. Couple cool comments we should show. We got someone on YouTube watching on Bucs Report on YouTube, Seminole Buccaneer. Shout out to you, Seminole Buccaneer. Appreciate the love. Our guy who's come with some real good comments tonight. I wish he would tell me how to correctly pronounce his name, but I'm going to say my Sidor. Justin Watson, the odd man out in Tampa. I'm glad you brought up Justin Watson's name. He's like I believe in his 4th season out of Penn. He's a tall guy who's deceivingly fast. I in the last month actually went to his like pro day workout and watched him because that's the most eyes I can get on Justin Watson here in Canada, and like he could be a receiver. But the question that was just asked, is he the odd man out? Sorry, I'll bring it up again. Is Justin Watson the odd man out? See, he has tremendous special teams value. He's one of, I think, like the only wide receivers to ever have like a sack. He's proven himself to be really valuable on specials. I expected him to develop a niche role, but unfortunately the Bucs have just continued to add these talented guys in the later rounds, like Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller, who we've talked about, Jalen Darden. So in terms of as a receiver, yeah, he's probably out of the mix, but I think he can hang around the team just based on his special teams capability. And what a testament that is, in my opinion, to like the right way to do your job. Obviously, he wants to catch balls and be a receiver on the offense, but he is just grinding it out and created a spot for him on this Super Bowl winning team in special teams. So that's super cool. Yeah, so cool. Some people are commenting on whether I resemble a Ricky Gervais.
A healthy Ricky Gervais.
Okay, a healthy Ricky Gervais. All right. Oh, there was another comment I wanted to get to. Okay, expectations for Jalen Darden. We just got, that's another question from Seminole Buccaneer. I want to get to that. I think right away, my expectation for him is that he takes hold of the punt returner, potentially kick returner role for the Buccaneers and brings some electricity to that position. I think Jaden Mickens actually impressed me last year. It's generally been a position that the Buccaneers have lacked in terms of having a quality kick returner, which many teams do. I mean, it's becoming rarer and rarer to have a difference maker there. But I think that's where Jalen Darden is going to carve out his way to produce and dress every week, hopefully, in the meantime. And then I think once a position opens up, I think he could slide in and work his way up to being a competent receiver for the Buccaneers. We'll see what happens with Godwin. Scotty Miller, I think, is going to get some interest on the open market when his rookie deal's up, which will happen. So we'll see in the future. But for now, he's a special teamer, tried and true, and that's what I got. So, okay. Moving along here. I mean, Bo, I don't know. Are you good? Like, do you want to keep rolling here? Do you got anywhere to be or what?
No, I'm good to go. Yeah, like I'm loving the comments we're getting and all the engagement. So yeah, whatever you want to do, I'm game.
All right, man. You just let me know because I'm ready to rock. And my guy Keith at Bucs Report said there is no show after us tonight. So he said take it as long as you want to.
Okay.
So we got more to cover. So why don't we just keep on rolling with the punches? And see what's next. So what I think we should do now is I wanted to talk about breakout receivers. So NFL receivers. I compiled a little list here of guys who before I do that, some Mickens talk, and I didn't really finish my thought on Mickens. So Johnny Dean, who's been very active and engaged this entire time. Mickens impresses is something I thought I would never hear. Darden's main competition in practice for special teams is going to be TJ Logan. Yeah, interesting. Like Mickens, I'm just saying he was valuable for us returning kicks down the stretch run of the Super Bowl last year, and I will stand by that absolutely. TJ Logan coming off the injury, one of Bruce Arians' guys, formerly from the Arizona Cardinals, and before that he was a North Carolina Tar Heel, I believe. TJ Logan's solid, but I think Mickens has some legal issues too, which is part of the problem. So that was just something worth doing. So anyway, breakout receivers for 2021. So I just wanted to come up with some names of guys I think are going to take a step forward. And I didn't necessarily have I didn't have strict criteria. So whatever it is, I expect them to take a major jump this year is kind of my criteria. Bo, as I go through my list here, please feel free to chime in and give us your thoughts on these guys and,
yeah, totally.
Rip them apart or pat me on the back, whatever you need, man.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah, I unconventionally I went with a rookie because I just want to reinforce my love for this player and I want to attach my name to his success in the NFL. That's how high I am. Can you guess who it is, Bo, since you've heard me talking about this rookie class of wide receivers?
I would cry on stream right now if it's not Jamar Chase.
Yeah, so you know me. It's Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase, I've said it before, I think he's going to be a I think he's going to be the best receiver in the NFL in 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about Jamar Chase. He's that kind of talent. I think people forget he didn't play last year. So he just has all the tools. I love everything about him. We've talked about him, at least I have a lot on previous podcasts. So I'm not going to just like spend forever. I'm just going to kind of give these names. Second guy I expect to be a breakout player this year is CeeDee Lamb. Second year out of Oklahoma. Already talked about Mike McCarthy having really peculiar usage of him, which was frustrating when you like a guy and you want to see him succeed, and he's put in that type of position. Still don't know what the Cowboys were doing hiring Mike McCarthy. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb is a guy I could see taking a big step this year. A big problem as well last season was a lack of quarterback play. I don't even want to try to recall the names of some of the guys throwing the ball after Andy Dalton got hurt. It was a disaster on both sides of the ball for Dallas, but it was no fault of those receivers. And CeeDee Lamb has he can do a bit of everything. He's got wicked hands. He can jump out the gym. He's a red zone threat. His yards after the catch are phenomenal. So he's a guy, don't be shocked if he kind of blows up the spot a little bit this year, especially with a guy like Amari Cooper beside him to take a lot of the pressure off of him and with Dak throwing the ball.
Yeah, Dak coming back is huge for CeeDee Lamb. I think it's always going to be frustrating watching Mike McCarthy's offense, which is kind of crazy after he had so much success with Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, I would love to see CeeDee Lamb have a big year. We were talking on the last podcast, I want to say. We're not the biggest NFC East fans, but they've got a really compelling division this year. Between CeeDee Lamb on the Cowboys, they've got a bunch of Giants wide receivers that I'm excited to see. Also, the Washington football team, they've got a pretty nice wide receiver group as well too. So they didn't make our top fives, but I still think that they would be in the top half of the league if we were going to run through them. But yeah, I don't disagree on CeeDee Lamb at all. I could totally see him having a big year as wide receiver 2, possibly even becoming wide receiver 1 in a pinch.
Yeah, nice. And then the other guy, so he's spent a few years in the league. DJ Moore in Carolina. The Panthers had a solid receiving group with him and Robbie Anderson. That was quite the tandem. Obviously, Samuel has left to Washington, so as you just mentioned, that creates even more of a impressive group in Washington. Unfortunately, the only guy they got is Fitzmagic to throw them the ball. No disrespect to Ryan Fitzmagic. He worked magic for the Bucs. That's where he got the nickname and all. But anyway, back to DJ Moore. I really like him. I liked him coming out of Maryland. I think he is really good, and I think this is the year. I'm not out here like calling Sam Darnold the next Joe Montana, but I do think people are potentially underrating the fact that his career is alive still. He was stuck in New York playing for the Jets with a dysfunctional franchise there. And I could see Sam Darnold delivering more accurate passes on a more consistent basis than Teddy Bridgewater did. And I think Carolina has done a really nice job. Matt Rule, the head coach there, Joe Brady running the offense. I like what they're forming. Sorry to say it, Bucs fans. And DJ Moore will be a big piece of what they have going forward. Him and Robbie Anderson's a nice tandem, but I expect DJ Moore to take a big step this year.
Yeah, I'm looking at our comments here, asking who was the most underrated wide receiver in the NFC South. DJ Moore is definitely in that conversation. I could definitely see him having a big year. I'm not huge on Sam Darnold. I like the trade. I just like the idea of being aggressive and taking a chance on a number two pick overall in Sam Darnold. Was he number 2 or was he number 1? I can't remember.
Darnold was 2. That's the year. Yeah. Darnold, that's Baker's year. That's the year Baker was drafted.
Yeah.
Darnold went 2 to the Jets.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm not super high on him just the more that I think about his fit in that system. But Matt Rule is smarter at football than I am. So if he sees something that he likes over there, I could totally see that working out for them. But yeah, if DJ Moore is able to get the ball consistently, I think he's going to turn a ton of heads this year.
Yeah, so that would be my answer for Seminole Buccaneer who asked who is the most underrated receiver in the NFC South. I would say DJ or Robbie Anderson. It's one of those guys. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying I'm in love with Sam Darnold. I'm just saying don't be surprised if he experiences a bit of a rejuvenance and is productive in Carolina running Joe Brady's offense for Matt Rule.
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned this name earlier. Number 4 on my list, possible breakout receivers for 2021, Brandon Ayuk. Talented rookie wideout last year playing for San Fran. Obviously they had a terrible year. And you know, Deebo Samuel was hurt. Tons of guys were hurt for the Niners this past year, right? Like things just weren't working. So Brandon Ayuk was like productive. They were like handing him the ball, throwing him the ball. He's a very versatile weapon like that. This year, Deebo Samuel back. They're going to get all their weapons going, and I think Ayuk has some real potential to kind of explode on the scene a little bit as a bit of a difference maker. And I think he could potentially be more of a weapon than Deebo Samuel even.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
Potentially.
I feel like every time I watch the Niners, if Deebo Samuel was playing, I was just like, oh, they're going to win this game. But yeah, Ayuk definitely proved it, and he proved that he could do more than just be a receiver for you. He could catch like small screen passes or those push passes where he's really a runner. It's really a rush, but they still count it as a pass in the NFL. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a ton of disagreement here. But yeah, Brandon Ayuk, if he's able to get the ball consistently, I think he'll be a little bit better if they do give the reins to Trey Lance, and he'll become somewhat of a safety blanket for Trey Lance as a guy who's able to get open and find his way in the chaos for Trey Lance to find. So I won't be surprised if he gets a little bit more run once they have Brandon Ayuk and once they have Trey Lance behind center.
Nice. And yeah, the number 5 on my list is T. Higgins in Cincinnati. T. Higgins really kind of flew under the radar last season. 67 catches, 6 touchdowns. He's 21 years old. I mean, I like what T. Higgins does. He's definitely a bit of like a red zone target, like coming out of Clemson. I think, again, the pairing, the squad they've put together there in Cincy, that offense is going to be really good with Joe Burrow. I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. And I think those receivers together, Higgins is worth mentioning as like calling him a breakout. Like he already had a solid rookie campaign, so it wouldn't necessarily be a breakout. But I mean, that's what I'm looking at here is younger guys who have the potential to take the next step. Jamar Chase there, Boyd, they're going to take the heat off. So I could see him scoring. I could see him reaching like potentially like 9-10 touchdowns, double-digit touchdowns at some point. Whether it's this year or not, we'll see. Not sure if you have thoughts on T. Higgins, Bo, or if you want me to roll through and chime in when you feel compelled to do so.
Yeah, you can keep going. Like the only thing with the Bengals is that I'm concerned about their offensive line. I think we talked about that during the draft as well too. It's just that they don't. I'm worried about them keeping Burrow upright to get the ball to the Jamar Chases and T. Higgins of the world. But yeah, if they are able to get protection, it's kind of similar to the Steelers in that same division. They will be, that wide receiver group will be as good as their offensive line is.
Yeah,
more time is good.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Hopefully they can keep Burrow upright. Absolutely. Yeah. Jerry Jeudy, another receiver out of Bama, had a slow year last year. The quarterback play in Denver is a bit concerning, but they'll have Cortland Sutton coming back off injury, which will help take the heat off Jeudy. He's just a really talented player, and he was pretty quiet under the radar in that rookie season. So whether it's Bridgewater or Drew Lock, I expect it. I imagine Drew Lock's a little too erratic for what head coach Nick Fangio is going to be trying to do there. Like I think he wants to pound the rock and avoid mistakes. So I just can't see Drew Lock fitting in there. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure we'll probably get to an Aaron Rodgers episode at some point. We've mentioned him enough times on the podcast at this point. But yeah, if Aaron Rodgers ends up being the quarterback there, I think you'll see a breakout year from basically every Broncos wide receiver.
Yeah. Okay. And then Kadarius Toney at 7. Anyone who follows my work, our work, knows I was big on Kadarius Toney coming into the draft. And I think, I thought this might be a hot take. It's not like I'm out here putting him in my top 5 best receiving groups in the NFL, but Bo did that already. So this just seems like a super tame, casual Sunday take. But yeah, I think Kadarius Toney's really good, and I think people are going to realize it this year because like you, Bo, I think that offense is going to take a big step this year. And then Rondale Moore, another rookie I already talked about, but I don't want to talk too much about rookies, especially if I've already mentioned them. Do you have any thoughts on either of those two guys that you want to share, Bo? Or
yeah, I would just say for the Florida fans, Kadarius Toney, a little Percy Harvin light. The more I look at what he's able to do, and on YouTube at least, just looking back on some of his games and the production that he's had, he could be a game changer easily. And yeah, Rondale Moore, I think we already talked about it. I just like hearing us say that he jumps higher than Zion Williamson.
yeah, and I'm not trying to put unreal expectations on these rookie receivers, right? It takes a bit. Look at CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy last year. But more in the long term, these are guys who have the potential to really pop. And then Laviska Shenault Jr., he's in Jacksonville playing with Trevor Lawrence. Now he's got a quarterback. You got DJ Chark there. So they are far from a dynamic passing attack, but I think he's a guy in year 2 who could take a leap with such dramatically improved quarterback play from Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, no matter what you think, he's going to get the ball out to guys, and he's going to give them a chance to make plays. And I think Shenault can make some plays. He was a very dynamic player at Colorado. And someone I had my eyes on in the draft, and then he landed in Jacksonville, and I was like, all right, we'll check in later, man. We'll see what happens in a year or two. And sure enough, in walks the golden boy, sunshine, Trevor Lawrence, to save the day and potentially save Laviska Shenault's reputation around the league. So that's why he deserves mention.
Yeah, I'm with you. Urban Meyer as well coming in there to feature him. Urban Meyer's been pretty well documented as a guy who can get wide receivers, scheme them open as well too. So I would expect that we're no disagreement from me again on the wide receivers. We're looking to break out, but yeah, see what they can do out in Dew Fall.
Right. And then this is a guy you mentioned last time when we did our last episode together, when we previewed the AFC South Bowl for Indianapolis, Michael Pittman Jr. Out of USC. Of course, the son of Michael Pittman, Super Bowl winning running back with biceps bigger than anything you've ever seen before. It is his son. So he's got Buccaneer genetics, the great Michael Pittman. But yeah, he's a big body, and I mean the Colts have a well-rounded roster, and they got to throw to someone. Carson Wentz isn't a guy I'm high on, as I mentioned earlier, and I know you feel the same. But Frank Reich runs a good offense. He runs a good ship, and they're going to be similar to Jacksonville. They're going to be throwing to someone, and I think Pittman could really kind of take a leap here in his second season.
Yeah, and they still have T.Y. Hilton as well too, but if Carson Wentz is going to be good, I think it's going to be getting the ball to Michael Pittman Jr. more than it is going to be T.Y. Hilton. Pittman, as we just said, huge physical specimen, can catch pretty much anything that's in his radius, but the idea of having Carson Wentz throwing the ball means he's not going to have a ton of balls in his radius. He's going to have to work to get them after they're in the air. So we'll see with that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's almost like he's like a similar mold to like Alshon Jeffrey was when Wentz was throwing him the ball in Philly, you know?
Exactly.
Type of receiver he might have familiarity with, or just a natural comfort level. T.Y. Hilton, I mean, I applaud him for how productive he's been. It shocks me every season. I expect him to fall off, but he's just like, he's just not a number one, like, in my opinion, like on an elite passing offense. To no fault of his own. He'd be great in a number 2 role. But he's entering the dark days of his career potentially. Okay, well, that we're at just about an hour and 50 minutes, so we wanted to enjoy having all of the wonderful viewers through the Bucs Report various networks here, and try to interact as much as we could in the comments. it was fun chopping it up about wide receivers, ranking the wide receiver groups, not without much debate and argument, which is just how we like it. Yeah, Bo, I don't know if you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to hit on as it might relate to the NFL, wide receiver position, Bucs stuff, whatever, before we bid adieu.
No, I think we covered it all. I don't have anything else on football. It's still May, so we got a lot of a lot of anticipation, a lot of content to deliver you guys. Hopefully, you guys will join us on our next show here, the Bucs Banter. If I'm invited back, am I invited back? I hope.
I mean, like I said, like you're inching real close to co-host status, buddy. Your name might not be guest on the Bucs Banter podcast for very long.
Yeah, you got to change it. So change it from guest. Got to change the overlay at some point. We'll see. This worked as a 2-man. Scott can keep. I don't know, play another round next week if you want. So we look great up here in this our favorite overlay here, the number 2, the 2-man go. So no, I'm just kidding, Scott. We need you back. We need you to just be ruthless and mean to everyone. So I think you would get a ton of enjoyment out of the fan engagement we're getting right now. So yeah, no, thanks for having me on. If people want to follow me on Twitter, I'm Bo Knows Ball, BOH Knows Ball. But yeah, there's a lot of basketball on my feed right now, but if you want to come hang out, I'll be over there, and we're going to talk a ton of football on Sundays and throughout the weeks once the season starts. So yeah, thanks.
Lots of love coming in. Yeah, Bo, always appreciate it, man. And yeah, you'll definitely be back here next week. And for anyone else who's ever looking for additional Buccaneers focused content, like I said earlier, head over to www.bucsbanter.ca, not .com.ca, where there's plenty of written work there for you to consume if you're looking for some reading in the off season. And also, hit us up on YouTube. Feel free to like and subscribe. We're available via podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And give us a follow at Bucs Banter at Bucs Banter on Twitter. And we love to interact there as well, just as we've enjoyed interacting with you all here tonight. I want to say thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you next Monday at 7 p.m. with the Bucs Banter podcast. Until then.